I killed my September TBR. Hello, I am Colleen Delaney. I am an author, a librarian, an avid reader, and welcome to my channel. This is my What I Read in September video, and I actually did a very good job completing my September TBR. Now, I read some romance, I read some dark academia, I read some cozy mysteries, I read some real short novellas, I read some lit fic, all different stuff. I am gonna go through this video in the order in which I read them, so it's easy for my brain instead of like dividing them by genre. So the first book I read was All the Feels by Olivia Dade. It was an ARC. I get ARCs through NetGalley, which are advanced readers copies, and then I review them. Okay, here's the thing. I had heard so many good things about Olivia Dade, so many good things. I'm in a lot of romance book groups. Everybody loves her. So when I saw the ARC available and that I could get it, I just clicked it and thought, okay, I'm finally gonna read an Olivia Dade. I should have read the description because it's a Hollywood romance, which really is not my jam. I'm just not a Hollywood romance. I can like barely do a billionaire romance. They're just not sort of my favorite kind of romance. I already don't read a ton of contemporary, but I really wanted to try Olivia Dade, so I did. The premise of All the Feels is that we have Alex, who is a very famous actor on a really popular TV show, and I've heard online that it's supposed to be modeled after Game of Thrones, but basically it's a TV show about Greek gods, so it's like a high fantasy type TV show. He has recently gotten into some PR trouble. He got in a fight in a bar, and so the producers of the show basically hire him a handler. And the handler is this woman, Lauren, who's a former ER therapist, and her job is basically to follow him around and make sure he doesn't get into trouble. It's kind of a strange premise because they like live together, which I don't think this is very realistic, but obviously a lot of stuff in romance isn't very realistic. But let me know if you have some in Hollywood and this is realistic, that people have handlers that follow them 24 hours a day and live with them, because I would be interested to know that. A big part of the story is that Lauren is not attractive. She's very short and she's overweight. At the beginning of the story, Alex's inner monologue about the way Lauren looks is not very kind, and it's purposely not, you know, super hurtful, but it just sort of bothered me listening to him. He doesn't really make fun of her appearance or of her weight, but he makes fun of her height constantly, and it bugged me. I don't know. I know like lots of people are short and don't feel perfect, and obviously I never feel perfect, but to have the romance hero making fun of the heroine, and then later he sort of switches to like talking about how much he loves how short she is, it didn't rub me the right way. I liked Lauren as a heroine. I thought she was interesting. She had an interesting career. She had good self-esteem about the way she looked, even though not large portions, but there's several instances of the book where random strangers comment on her appearance in very cruel ways. But I liked Lauren. I didn't really like Alex, which is interesting because usually I can read a romance and like the hero and the heroine's fine and be fine with it, but not liking the hero was kind of hard for me, probably because I'm a straight woman. Now, Alex has ADD, and that's a big part of the story, that he has to like remember to take his meds and eat enough. And while I appreciated the representation, his part of the narrative was really jumpy and almost hard for me to follow. I also had a hard time believing their chemistry because at the beginning they just really don't like each other, and it is sort of, you know, enemies to lovers, which is like the most popular trope right now. But when they did make the turn, it didn't feel believable to me. That being said, Olivia Dade's a really good writer. Like the writing in this book is very good. I'll definitely pick up a different Olivia Dade that maybe isn't a Hollywood story. I know some of her earlier ones, I think she has like some librarian heroines, which is more my cup of tea. So I'll check out one of those because I did think she was a good writer, and it wasn't, you know, unenjoyable to read the book. It just wasn't for me. She does write a very good sex scene. I will give her that. If you are looking for someone who writes a very good sex scene, check out Olivia Dade. I'd say I would give this book like 2.75 stars, 2.5, 2.75 stars, right around there, just because it really wasn't for me. But it might be for you. All the Feels by Olivia Dade comes out on October 26th. All right, my next book is another romance and another one I read on my Kindle. So it's Hard Pressed by Canterbury. This was exactly what I wanted to read at this point. I actually got this book in a bundle of fall-themed romances, and a lot of times I'll buy like a bundle like that, and then I'll read that bundle over the next like 5 years. I bought a Christmas bundle like 3 years ago, and every year I pick one to read in December. So I randomly picked Hard Pressed out of this bundle, and I was very happy I did. It's not like a super fall romance because it takes place in August, but you're in Maine, so it feels more like that like end of summer transition to fall. And in Maine, I mean, they're already wearing their cozy clothes and doing a ton of baking because it's pretty chilly in Maine in August, apparently. I've never been to Maine in August. I've only been there in October, and it was lovely, and I'd love to go back. This is a really traditional small town romance. You have the hero Jackson, who's of course the sheriff, and then Annette, who's the heroine, owns the bookstore in town, and she also loves to bake on the side. The book begins with her coming off a heartbreak, which is kind of a weird heartbreak. She had sort of held a candle for this man her whole life since high school, that they were going to end up together. And the book begins, the book is the second book in the series, and I did not read the first, but apparently the first book is about this man, and he's gay, and he has found the love of his life, and she somehow never realized he was gay, which I'm not sure how that happened. But this book opens with her hammered at a bar. The bartender calls the sheriff and is like, you have to get her out of here. Jackson tries to take her home. Annette doesn't have her keys. She doesn't have her phone, and she can't find like her hidden key that she has outside. And so he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know her family because her family doesn't live in the town, and he doesn't really know who she's close friends with to call and drop her off. So he decides to take her to his apartment and figures she'll just sleep it off. So they get there, and she starts being very aggressive with him and kissing him, and he has been pining after her since he moved to this town, which I think was like 4 or 5 months ago, and just like watching her from afar and thinking about how beautiful she is. But because she's so hammered, he knows that it wouldn't be ethical for them to take it any further. So he keeps trying to get her to go to bed. She takes off all her clothes. She's just driving him crazy, but she eventually passes out in her bed. In his bed, I'm sorry, and he sleeps on the couch. She wakes up mortified, can't believe she did that. She makes him some baked goods as an apology, and the story goes from there. It's a real like low angst, low conflict, nice story that takes place in a small town. It's very spicy. This is not a sweet small town romance. This is a very spicy small town romance. Canterbury also can write a very good sex scene. So if you're looking for something light, small town, lots of sex, Hard Pressed is the great read for you. I was looking through my Goodreads, and I gave Hard Pressed 5 stars because it was like exactly what I wanted to read at that point. Is it truly a 5-star read? I don't know. Usually I save 5 stars for books that I'm going to read over. I might read this next fall. It was really fun, but I would definitely recommend it. You probably won't think it's a 5-star read, but maybe you will. Maybe you'll be like me and be so in the mood for this type of book, and then you read it, so it's perfect. All right, so the next book I read was If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. I loved this book. I did love a lot of what I read this month. It was really nice. This book opens with Oliver Marks getting out of prison after 10 years, and the now retired Detective Colburn approaches him and asks him to tell him what really happened because, you know, double jeopardy, whatever. He can't get in more trouble. We go back 10 years when Oliver is in this really weird, elite fine arts college in rural Illinois, and what happens between him and the other theater majors. It's dark academia, it's close-knit group of friends where everyone's starting to sort of turn on each other. It's a really interesting read. If you like Shakespeare, definitely read this book because it has so many Shakespeare references into it. Part of the curriculum at the school they go to is that the only plays they put on are Shakespeare. So if you are into Shakespeare, if you majored in lit in college or are currently majoring in lit in college and have to take an entire class on Shakespeare like I did, this is a very, very good book. One of my good friends was a theater major in college and worked in theaters for a while, and I immediately recommended it to her. I was like, you're gonna love this book. It's a bit of a dense read. It's definitely like literary fiction. Story's not hard to follow, but there's so much Shakespeare in it that if you're not gonna skim the Shakespeare, you know, you're reading Shakespeare. That's not a fast read. At least it's not for me anymore. Maybe it was when I was 21 and taking Shakespeare classes, but it's not anymore. 4.5 stars because I probably won't read it again, but I will definitely recommend this to everyone. I think will like it. All right, next is The Cute and Super Short Fangs by Sarah Anderson. It's adorable. It's a graphic novel love story between a vampire and a werewolf. I think it's so cute. There's so many cute illustrations. This is like a 30-minute and under read. Grab it from your library. It's a blast. If you have a teenager in your life who's obsessed with vampires and werewolves and you want them to read a romance like that that's not angsty, this is a great one. Fangs, Sarah Anderson. I gave it 4 stars. A fun read. I read it twice. Hey, this is Editing Colleen, and my review of the next book was such an absolute disaster and impossible to edit. So we're gonna do it again. The Empress of Salt and Fortune by Nghi, which I gave 5 stars, was a fantastic read, and I did talk about a little bit already during my library book haul. This is a story within a story. It's a folk tale told from the point of view of both Rabbit, who is a former, basically, handmaiden to the Empress, and Nghi, who is a non-binary traveling monk collecting stories. Rabbit tells Nghi the story of her life and her time with the Empress of Salt and Fortune. It is a beautiful story about friendship and love and intrigue and politics, and I super recommend it. It's a short read, it's a fun read. That went much better than every other take I did. Next, I've got Every Heart of Dory by Shawna and McGuire. I did talk about this one a lot in my last library book haul video, so I will just say this is a 5-star read. It was fantastic. It's about children who go into portal worlds, like think Alice in Wonderland, Narnia, and come back, and what it's like to come back. There's a school that they go to, and they're all pretty unhappy. They all really want to get back to their other world. This is going to be, I think, a 10-book series, and I already got the second one to read in October. It was fantastic. It's a little gruesome at points, a little grisly. There's a lot of murders, but I would say 16 and up and good is good for it. Great trans representation, great ace representation. If you are looking for something for someone in your life who might appreciate seeing themselves in a book, I would definitely recommend this. Every Heart of Dory, a very fast read. I think 180 pages, 170 pages. Very quick, very enjoyable, 5 stars, loved it. All right, so next I read Arsenic and Adobo by Manansala. I think is how you say her last name correctly. If I'm wrong, I'm so sorry, correct me in the comments. One of my good friends recommended this to me months ago, and I finally got it because I saw it on Book of the Month in the backlist, and I was like, I'm gonna get it, I wanna read a cozy mystery. This book was fantastic. First of all, I'm a sucker for a book with good food description, and this book's food description is out of this world. You will be starving when you're reading this book because all they talk about are these wonderful meals at all the different restaurants in the town, and it's wonderful. I wish my small town in the Midwest, like this small town in the Midwest, had this many good restaurants, because it does not. Right, so in this book we meet Leela, and she has moved home from Chicago to help her aunt run her restaurant. They run a Filipino restaurant. They're all very passionate about food. Leela had been living in Chicago, going to culinary school and working in restaurants there, but she needed to come home to help. When her ex-boyfriend, who she does not get along with, and he also happens to run a food blog and write really negative reviews about their restaurant, drops dead in her restaurant, she is considered the #1 suspect. So we follow Leela as she goes through the town and tries to figure out who else maybe could have murdered him. It's really fun. It's pretty fast read, but like not like you're gonna fly through it. You wanna enjoy it, especially all the food descriptions. I would say 4.5 stars. It was a real fun mystery. I really liked it a lot. It's gonna be a series. I'll definitely read the rest. Okay, so then I read another cozy back-to-back, which probably wasn't a great idea since I'm not a huge cozy reader, but this is Skein of Death by Allie, Pleiter. I didn't love this book, and I'm a knitter, so I can't imagine if you're not a knitter you'd like this book very much because there is a lot of knitting talk. Mainly, the mystery was pretty easy to solve, and I felt like you could have cut 50 plus pages out of this book. There's a lot of redundancy in it, just like the same thing being said over and over and over again. I'm a pretty careful reader, so I don't need you to tell me the same thing 5 times. I got it the first time. It was fine. It did get to the point at the end where I was kind of forcing myself to pick it up because I just wanted to finish it, which I always feel like that's not a good sign with a book, especially towards the end. Towards the end, you should be wanting to read it because it should be, you know, the action should be happening. I gave this book 2.75 stars. If you're a huge cozy mystery reader fan, you might still like it, but since I read them pretty occasionally, this one wasn't for me. All right, next is Catherine House by Elisabeth Thomas, and this book is kind of hard for me to review. The vibes / aesthetic of this book are cool and really unique and very interesting. It's like dark academia meets Grey Gardens meets Gross Girl meets futuristic science meets Valley of the Dolls. It's very like crazy aesthetically, and the aesthetic sticks through the entire book. There's a lot of like purposefully disgusting stuff in this book, like a lot of talk of like vomit and blood, and there's a lot of drug use and being drunk, and like almost like the whole book's kind of fuzzy because of that. It almost felt like it was supposed to be a horror, but it wasn't really scary, which is good for me. One of my friends read this, and before I picked it up, I asked her if it was gonna be too scary for me, and she was like, it will not be too scary for you. She said it's kind of boring. It was a little boring. So when you're a writer, a big thing about telling your story is figuring out the right place to start it and the right place to end it. And I felt like this book did not start in the right place and it did not end in the right place. I felt like it ended at like 75%, which was purposeful. The ending is sort of like open-ended on purpose, but it felt very unsatisfying, and I think I would have liked the book better if it ended later. We follow Inez, who has gotten into this very strange school called Catherine House, which it's very shadowed with mystery. A lot of famous people have gone there and become extremely successful. It's a very rigorous academic environment. Once you go in, you do not come out for 3 years. There's a lot of stuff that happens in this book that I couldn't really suspend my belief enough to believe that this could happen. They would say that the alum have nothing but positive things to say about Catherine House and how wonderful their experience was there. And I sort of don't buy that after reading what happens there. I kind of don't buy that there would be that many people in on this big conspiracy. If you believe in conspiracy theories, you've never worked on a group project, because no one can keep their stuff to themselves. And that's sort of how I felt about this. I gave this book 3 stars on the aesthetic alone because building this world was really cool, and Catherine House was a very cool setting. I just didn't super enjoy the plot, and I didn't find a lot of it believable. Now, obviously, this is not like a realistic contemporary fiction, but still, I feel like you still need to make it believable, and a lot of this wasn't believable for me. Okay, then there are 2 books that I'm currently reading, and I'm not sure if I'll finish them before September's over. I've got a couple more days, but maybe. One of them is The Library Book by Susan Orlean. Okay, so I've been reading this for a long time. I've sort of been picking it up and putting it down. I'm on page 204 out of 3 something. I know it's like 309, I think. Yeah, I think it's 309. Here's the thing about this book. This book was really interesting for about 100 pages. This is not what I thought it was. This book was pitched, and the blurb says that it's about the 1986 fire in the Los Angeles Public Library. That is not what this book is about. This book is a history of the Los Angeles Public Library, which is interesting at points, but parts of it are really uninteresting. So I have found myself sort of skimming. I don't know if I'm gonna finish this book, which is odd for me. If I've read 200 pages of a book, I'm usually gonna get to the end of it. But it's hard when you like really aren't interested anymore in the story. I haven't even found out most of the fire because of the way it's structured, but I've gotten a really huge background on the Los Angeles Public Library. As a librarian, I would have probably loved to read this book in library school. It was not out yet, I don't think, when I was in library school. Now I'm gonna check the publication date to let you know for sure. And then you're gonna know when I was in library school. No, this came out in 2018. I graduated library school in 2011. So this is a book that I feel like should have been 100 pages shorter, which is hard though, because I know nonfiction books that are like 200 pages don't really sell. Or could have maybe been an article or a series of articles. I think I would have enjoyed reading this in like my introduction to library class, or even like my collection development class, like stuff like that. But in terms of the average reader, I don't think most people will enjoy reading this book. It's kind of strange. You meet the head of the Los Angeles Public Library, every single head of them so far. And that's a lot of people. And some of them are interesting, but some of them it's kind of like, why am I reading about this person? So at this point right now, 200 pages in, I'd give it 3 stars because I'm a librarian and I'm interested in libraries. I think the average person would give it closer to 2. I don't know if I'll finish it. I'll let you know in my October reads if I actually do finish it or if I just return it to the library unfinished. I have so much good stuff I want to read in October that I don't know if I'm going to take the time to read another 100 pages. And then the last book I'm currently reading right now is on my Kindle, Prince of Broadway by Joanna Shupe. This is my book right now that if I can't sleep at night, I am reading. I listen to the podcast Heaving Bosoms, which if you like romance and you like laughing so hard you're almost going to wet your pants, you should listen to Heaving Bosoms. I'll put a link in the notes for you. I listened to the Heaving Bosoms recap episode on this book already, so I already know what happens, which is nice. When I can't sleep, it's nice to read something I've already read or something where I know what's going to happen. So like last night I couldn't sleep, so I read probably like 50 pages of it. I'm not super thrilled to pick it up since I know what's going to happen, but it's an enjoyable read. I really like Joanna Shupe. I've read several of her books this year and really enjoyed them. I probably won't finish that in October unless I have a couple more bad nights of sleep, which I hope I don't. I will probably finish that at some point before December because I'm just picking it up when I want to. And those are all my September reads. That's actually a pretty good reading month for me. I'm going to try to read a lot in October also, which my October reads video came out a couple days ago. Let me know what you read in September, what you liked, what you didn't like. Have you read any of these books and did you enjoy them? If I had to pick a favorite read for the month, that would be really hard, but I would probably say If We Were Villains was my favorite read of the month. Was it? It might have been The Empress of Salt and Fortune. It was one of those two. It was either If We Were Villains or The Empress of Salt and Fortune. I'm just thinking in my head right now, I gave The Empress of Salt and Fortune 5 stars and I gave If We Were Villains 4.5 stars, but the length difference I feel like puts a different impact on your reading soul. So one of those two books was my favorite. I hope you had a wonderful September reading month also. I'm excited for October and for more reading. If you like this video, if you like me, if you think that our reading tastes are aligned, go ahead and give me a like or a subscribe. I'd love it. And I will see you in my next video.